How's it going, guys? I got my buddy Danny Dubose on the channel today. Has a new channel out himself that you might want to check out called Danny Dubose, Dude in the Philippines. Great American title there. Gotten to know Danny about a couple years ago at the start of my channel, and just very interesting guy. Always interested to hear what his perspective is, and I think you're gonna enjoy it as well. So let's go meet Danny.
Subscribe now.
So Danny, very good to have you here. I think we met first like a year, 2 years ago from my channel. What do you think?
I think about the time when your channel started, I jumped on board, and
I haven't scared you away yet?
No, I found it very interesting, and seems like a lot of your perspective I can share with. It's kind of speaking my talk. Yeah.
I really appreciate that. Yeah, same with me. Whenever I hear your comments and getting to know you, there is a lot about you that is surprising in a good way. You have so much wisdom and depth, and so I really appreciate you taking the time to be here with with your time here in Cebu. So I wondered if we might go back a year or 20 or maybe 30. You'd mentioned that you were at the Philippines before. Tell us about when that was and what you were doing over here.
I was in the U.S. Navy, and we were like on what they call a Westpac cruise. So we stopped into the Philippines 2 separate times. And the ship, when it goes into Philippines at that time, there would be some repair work, and they had a great shipyard. And so we would get to spend some time here while we were here. Okay. And that was like in 1981. So that was my first experience.
Right. So very first time here, you remember how long you were here for?
I think it was a week and a half or so, something like that. So we had a few days, maybe 10 days or so. On the first trip.
So I imagine busy, but did you have time to get off the ship and kind of meet locals and things like that?
Yes. It was a fun time back then. You had your work hours that you did. And on mine, it was like 4 shifts, so I could work in 8 hours sometime during the day, and I was free to go out most of the rest of the time. As long as I was back on time for work, it was okay.
Okay. So you were about how old at that time? Young
21, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And was this one of the first places that you traveled overseas, or you'd already been other places?
We had been to a couple of the islands. It was on a cruise, so you hop from one spot to the next, and like Guam and different places like that. Like Navy bases or air bases out there.
Sure.
And I think Philippines was one of the spots that we had been out to sea for about 90 days to 100 days. Now, as a young man, being out at sea and having no ladies around, no drinks around, and that at that time was such a big part of my life, you go bonkers when you hit the Philippines.
Yes, I can imagine, especially so around 21, around a bunch of guys all the time. So you get off the ship, and so tell me what your first impressions were, of the Philippines and Filipinos.
One of the things that I enjoyed almost right away is the friendliness of the Filipinos. And one of the things I learned, it really gave me a big perspective of how the other world lives.
Sure.
Here we have, in the U.S. we have air conditioning, we have windows, and, things like that.
Yeah.
We have indoor restrooms, not buckets or holes or whatever, and we take a shower in a shower room with hot and cold water. And here I saw it's like a community hose that people would bathe from. So it really opened my eyes a lot about, wow, we're not in Kansas anymore. There is other ways that people live.
For sure.
I noticed they were still happy.
Very interesting. So how did that impact you? Because coming from the U.S., if people were living in similar conditions, especially if it's hot and humid, no air conditioning, just that alone is going to bring out, the worst in most Americans. So how did that impact you as, a young man, just seeing people, they don't have a lot, but they're still happy?
Well, the hot weather didn't bother me at all, because I come originally from a place in Southern California where it could be 118, 119 degrees.
Okay.
Or 100 degrees at night. And we used to, do construction work in that kind of weather. So the weather didn't bother me much. I noticed it was, much more humid, but it didn't bother me much at all.
Sure.
So
how much of it was, at first when you saw people, getting to know locals, and how much of it was just you were a young guy and you saw a lot of pretty girls? What was your interactions like?
Well, on the ship, on your way over there, you get to hear all the war stories of guys who were there before, and they set you up for, this is what you can expect. You're going to walk into a place, you're going to be approached by several girls, and you're going to have to shoo away a certain amount of them, and choose someone that you want to be with, and they'll sit with you to have drinks and other things. So that was already pre-programmed in me. But life-wise, what I really recognized was, number one, like I said, how friendly the people were, how industrious they were. I could go, and I did go, I could go to a small booth on the street and order a set of Python boots, and they measure my feet. And they say, okay, come back later. And then later today I show up and they have these boots custom sized for my feet.
Right.
And I wanted a certain t-shirt that said a certain thing, and there was a guy right on the street, a screen printer, and people just found ways to be in the business and do things. They're very, very creative that way.
Absolutely. I still find to this day there's, a lot of Filipino ingenuity. A lot of people here, for example, have motorcycles. They don't have cars. And so at times I've seen people literally with, one person will be driving the motorcycle, one person will be on the back of the motorcycle holding a refrigerator and using that motorcycle to transport the, refrigerator to where they have to go. And that's kind of a silly example, but I've seen so many examples here of what, Filipinos do to make something out of almost nothing. It's very impressive.
We have a lot in the U.S. that we can learn from the Philippine people. It's like, rather than complain about what I don't have, I can't do this because I don't have that. It's like, I can do this. How do I do it with what I have? The innovation that they have is just is amazing.
Yes.
Things are done even on a more simple basis, but it's not an obstacle. If you need a refrigerator brought from point A to point B and you don't have a car, but you have a motorcycle, there's going to be a way. We just have to figure it out. And it seems like they just barrel right into getting the result rather than complaining about, I don't have this, I don't have that. The conditions aren't right for me.
Yes, absolutely. Right now there's a pretty big event here in Cebu going on where there will be just a ton of people, coming from everywhere to this event. And with our, restaurant here, Delish Deli, we're going to have a food booth there. And so they're trying to, get, a new space for all the food vendors to come. And one of our friends also has a restaurant there. And when they came back, I said, so, how's it going with the space that they're building for, all the food stalls? And they said, well, look at my pants and my shoes, and it was just completely muddy. He's a tall guy, but it went pretty close to his knee just from all of the mud and everything there. I said, what do you mean? They haven't put down any of the cement or anything for, where things are going to be? And he said, well, they were working on that, but there's no cement mixer. There wasn't anything to actually make the cement to start, putting things together. I said, well, what'd they do? He said, well, pretty muddy and there was a lot of rainwater, so they just started mixing stuff with the rainwater and started making things to happen, so that's one of the things I love about the Philippines is they're going to take whatever they have and they're not going to complain about it. They're just going to make things happen. And so it's very interesting that you were here, what is that, about 40 plus years ago?
Yeah.
And that's really, it just seems like it's always been part of the culture here.
Yeah, well, it's been as long as I know. Yeah, it's been that way. It's a great lesson for us all, though, is to use the cards that you were dealt with.
Yes.
like the Gambler song once said, every hand's a winner, every hand's a loser. It just depends on how you play what you have.
Absolutely.
And that really defines who can be successful and who can't.
So true. Yeah, I really appreciate you mentioned that. So you had your first, experience in the Philippines, and it sounds like you had a bit of fun.
We had some fun.
I can
We can't
imagine.
tell all the stories.
Save that for another channel. We're family rated over here, Danny.
That's true.
But then you came back a second time. How long ago was it that you came back a
It
second
was
time?
the second time. Well, it was after about a month or so because we were on the same cruise, and we stopped back in for another 10 days or so. I don't remember the exact matter of days, but it doesn't matter. But we did it again, and I got to meet some of the same people that I met before, and did some of the same stuff we did before. And of course, at that time, I was, I guess I always have been quite an eater. But
I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, you wouldn't know.
I wouldn't know.
Whenever we went to a new country, a new place, because I've been to Hong Kong and different places on this cruise, one of the first things I would do is get with a couple buddies and say, let's go find a greasy spoon.
Yeah.
Not a name brand, because Shakey's was here at that time
Right.
even.
Yeah.
It was kind of surprising. But I wanted to go to a mom and pop, somebody cooking food out of their own home and set up tables and chairs. I wanted to eat the local stuff. And it was funny because a lot of times we just say, just feed me, just give me something. Okay. And then it would come and I would say something like, well, what's that? And they'll say, it's good.
Right.
In other words, don't ask. It's good.
Sure, just enjoy it.
So we'd eat it, and it was good, and have no idea what all the possibilities it could have been back then.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. Well, what is it? It's good. That's what it is.
That's classic. So once you left the Philippines and you were out of the Navy, did you just kind of forget about things here, or did the Philippines kind of linger with you?
I never forgot the Philippines. I told myself then, I'm going to come back. I'm going to get back here. And it took me 40-something years to do it.
Yeah.
To where now I can come back, and I find so many things are much the same as they were before. We have cell phones now, but
Right.
But culture and things that I've seen, even how the traffic goes, is something I was semi-familiar with because I'd walked through it.
Right. And so when you say how traffic goes, do you mean it just kind of goes crazy, or what do you mean by that?
I was noticing this morning on the way over here that what in the United States you would say one car in one lane, and over here the lanes are a little more narrow, and yet you could still fit a car and two bikes, one on each side.
Yes.
And somebody walking.
Yes. So here I think
Everything is really close.
Yes, and I think lane lines they're kind of suggestions over here. People don't really take those lines as
yeah, if you want to, yeah.
Yes. But if you want to veer over into the other person's lane, that's okay as well. So it's really different. That's one of the things.
But the cooperation is amazing.
Yes, and the lack of horn honking for the type of driving that there is as well is very impressive.
Yeah, the flow works so much better than in places I've been to that have lights.
Sure.
Yeah, you may not move fast, but you keep moving, and you're always got the feeling of I'm making progress.
Yeah, that's optimistic. You're kinder than I would be with the driving.
Well, I've only been here a short time, so who knows? It may begin to aggravate me, and I hope not. But
I think here that the model of driving is kind of like a school of fish. You see a big school of fish, and they're just going along, and then immediately go here, and then immediately back here. I can't figure out how they know how to make that work, but they do. But driving here is a little bit like that. I just find that I got to learn to go with the flow, and those lines are, different things. They mean different things here than the
it's
US.
all up to interpretation, right?
It is, yes. Probably about 100 feet from here, there's an intersection that has like 5 or 6 different ways that people could approach it, and 0 stop signs and 0 lights, and I've survived that for 3 years. So
you're doing an amazing
I'm proud
job.
of that.
Yeah,
Yes.
You should be proud of that.
I should, but people make it work.
I tried to cross the street a couple of times. I've only been here a couple of days, but across some really busy streets to get to a shopping mall from a hotel or whatever. And I was able to observe quickly that there are no crosswalks. So I'm watching, and people just cross wherever they want to cross.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, all this traffic, it's almost like the old video games where things would fly in front of you and you try to shoot them.
Yes.
Except this was things fly in front of you and you tried to not hit them.
That's right.
So I would wait for a brave Filipino who knows the system much better than I do, and I'd wait for them to walk across, and I'd just go with them.
That's a smart way to do it. I don't know if you remember that old game Frogger, where you were a frog and there was all these cars and different,
Yeah.
That's what I feel like crossing the road.
Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah.
Yes.
And not get hit.
Yes, but I only got one life, so I try not to. But what I find here is that people will just go, and they're not going to stop. But if you do this hand gesture, they're going to stop. So I don't know what it is. If it's just you walking across the street, you're taking your life in your own hands. But if you'll just kind of say this, then it kind of works like you got superpowers, and people will mostly stop.
Could it be because of our size? It's like, if I hit that, it's going to be a lot of damage.
No,
Even for small?
They don't care. They'll run right over big guys like us too.
I have to keep that in mind.
Yes, but it could be a 4'8" Filipina, and if she does this, people tend to stop. So disclaimer, it doesn't mean they're always going to stop. So if you're over here, you really got to watch.
Don't count on it. Don't. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. So
you have magical powers, but don't extend. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's kryptonite for everybody as well. So tell me about what do you think it was that kept the Philippines memorable to you? You mentioned you've been to Hong Kong and different places. Why did you decide I'm going to wind up back in the Philippines? Why not some of those other countries?
I would have to say mostly the people, and as I found people attractive all over the world that I had been to, and I found good things about all of them. But it was just something about the Philippines that felt more warm. Probably because I grew up close to the Mexican border, so I grew up with a lot of Hispanics, and a lot of things kind of match with that, and you feel comfortable with it. For instance, many Hispanics, if they're having a party and they live next door to you, they're going to invite you over and they're going to feed you. Or if you walk by, they're going to offer you something. And that's kind of very similar to culture that's here.
Yeah.
So it's comfortable to me. I know a little bit more about what I'm getting into.
Yes. So tell me about the years in between, because it seems like when you came here, you were a young guy and having fun and hearing the war stories, which sound like love stories to me, but now you seem like a much different person.
Much different. The years have changed me a lot. The experiences have really changed me a lot. I'm not the guy who came in 1981, that's for sure.
Sure. So can you share with us, what are some of the things you think that, changed you over the years? And maybe if you could share some of the things, that you're doing now that I'm guessing you weren't doing then as well.
Okay, well, I went through quite an evolution. I was working with my father, who is a contractor, and I learned a lot of things from him, work ethic-wise. For instance, you didn't label yourself as a plumber or as a painter or as just a carpenter or just a rock work guy. You were on the spot for whatever was needed. So I learned many different trades. And nowadays, everybody that's like, you want to call a painter, but you need a wall patch, well, then you need to call a wall patch guy.
Right.
And that wasn't the way it is when I came up I guess you'd call it old school. So I learned a lot of things and how to improvise, much like they do in the Philippines, how to fix things you've never worked on before, how to figure out, well, this looks like it's supposed to move, but it doesn't, so I better get a new one of these, kind of, repair. And from that, I just, when business kind of went down, there was a time when there was quite a recession going on, and the construction business didn't do quite as well. And I kind of moved over to getting into sales and doing things like that. I was having trouble finding a job, so I decided that I would make my own job. And it was quite rewarding because it not for what it brought me, but for what it brought me afterwards. I decided that I would go and get a certain size paper that could be turned into a placemat, and I would put a picture in it, like a line drawing with a lot of detail, just little bitty things to look at that would draw you towards trying to figure out what you're looking at, what you're seeing, and line it with business cards. So I came up with the design, and I put it together, and I started going around, and I would say, would you like to have your business card here? And at the time I was only charging $150, and I was going to produce X amount of thousand of these, and I'm going to give them to restaurants. And I had a list of restaurants that would be willing to use them. I give it to them to use as placemats. And so their advertisement, while they're waiting for their food, they'd be looking at the picture, they would be seeing your ad.
Yeah, great idea.
And just, take it from there. I went into a company that was it was a tax guy, and it was not tax season. And a guy visiting with him, because they were friends and they did business together, was in a swimming pool and water treatment business. They were both in their office, and they let me come in because one of them knew who my dad was, so they gave me the chance to entertain them. And they told me, first thing, I want you to know this is not tax season, and this is not swimming pool season, and we don't need any advertisement.
Right.
And I said, oh, okay. Well, let me tell you about what this is. And I just went right into it. I walked out with 2 sales.
Nice.
And a job offer. The guy in the swimming pool industry said, he noticed I wasn't going to buy anything, and I bought something. Would you like to come to work for me? And I said, well, what do you got? And he started explaining to me. So I started selling water treatment door to door, which is door to door is a real tough job.
For sure.
Yeah.
And so about what time was this? About what year?
Gosh, these things are so far, probably later 80s.
Yeah.
84 to about 87.
Okay.
And while I was working for that company selling water treatment, we also sold swimming pools. So I started selling the swimming pools also, in-ground and above-ground pools. Well, the installer decided he was just going to go off somewhere else and do a different business. And then we had pools that I had sold that needed to get into the ground, but we had no installer. So I just said, okay, I'll just install them. It's kind of the attitude of whatever's needed, I'll be there.
Sure.
I'm a hole filler.
Right.
I'm just going to step in and do it. And just started doing it.
Very good.
Yeah.
So what, is that what you've continued to do till now, or?
Well, I was selling pool in a small area, and I was competing against a couple other companies. And this one guy that I would compete with fiercely against, he'd say bad things about me, and I would just say to the customer, I wonder why he says that. And I was outselling him for a while. And he decided to move to Las Vegas. This is from California, moved to Las Vegas, and he did really well there because there was a big boom going on. So he calls me up, his enemy, and says, it's like shooting fish in a barrel over here. Do you want to come up and work for me? And I said, okay. So we did that.
Wow.
And then, so I knew how to install pools, I knew how to sell pools, and I ended up doing both.
Right.
I become a sales manager, and I was training other people how to install pools and installing some myself. So I got really busy, 7 days a week, 16, 18-hour days. making stupid money and having no time to spend it.
Right.
Buying all the toys that I had no time to use. And after a certain amount of time, you just get to looking at it and decide, you know what, this is crazy. Who cares if I win? Who cares if I have all this money? It's going to do me no good when I'm dead. Exactly. And I felt like my life was kind of leaving me through this situation. So I backed away and I just quit the job. And the boss shakes his head and goes like, "You're making all this money. What's the matter?" And I went to work at a yoga studio.
So that's quite a leap.
Pennies.
So
it was. There was a time when I went into my garage and I spoke to these objects as if they could hear me. I was doing it for myself. I know they can't hear me, but I had a new Corvette. I had a new custom chopper. I had a fairly new Harley Davidson. And who can ride two motorcycles at once? And I had a truck, and I had all these other toys. And I walked into the garage and I looked at it. I said, "I got you guys to make me happy, and you're not doing it. So I don't need you anymore." And from that point, there was kind of a mind shift, and I just started selling all this stuff. Went to work at this yoga studio, getting a lot of training and yoga, Tai Chi, natural forms of healing, things like that. I had the money, so I started studying all this stuff and just working for literally pennies there, because I was happy there. I was not making big money, but I was still happy.
Yeah.
And that kind of taught me something like, wow, this is something I need to look into.
Yeah. So I notice now, when you respond and when we talk, I could tell you've really thought through things, deeply. So how did that come about in your life? When I talk to a lot of people, it's a fun conversation, but I could tell that they're living their life, they're still busy, they're, not necessarily thinking through things, reflecting on things. What changed in your life to make those changes?
Well, we just walked up to that point with my life story. I started receiving training, and also my natural curiosity of like, what is going on here? Why am I doing this movement? Why am I, the bigger things in life. And I started getting training on things like asking yourself these questions, and because you have these answers within you. Just got to quiet your mind. And when I started to learn how to quiet my mind, and I would go into these contemplations, and I would see things without an emotion of driving to get an answer, and just waiting to receive from within. So I started gaining these perspectives, and it was I started to get more and more curious. So I started looking into it. I looked at different spiritual leaders, and most of them from that taught things from thousands of years ago. Some of the old Asian wisdom. Because I had remembered when I was a child, I used to watch this series called Kung Fu, which was my church.
Right.
I mean, it was the things that they would teach and say in that program. It wasn't the fighting that interested me. It's like the deeper meanings of what you're doing and why. That kind of stuck with me, and that's become more and more of a curiosity. So I spent more time looking into that.
Yeah.
And it just let my curiosity just take me, in that direction.
I understand. So what about now? You retired? You working still? What's going on in your life?
Who knows? Yes. Actually, it's my intention to retire. However, the place where I worked really needs some of the expertise that I have gained. And I am sympathetic to the cause of making the world a better place. I just don't want to have to work every day.
Yeah.
So I have kind of an agreement, like maybe in the springtime I will go there and do some consulting, because there's some construction projects and developing that I had kind of started, but I'm not going to be there for. But at certain levels, they're going to need certain things so that I could provide. So at some point, we'll probably be going back there for a short period of time. I do not plan to move back there permanently. I plan to live here permanently.
Sure, in the Philippines.
Yes, unless I change my mind.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, I had people ask me, so what if you go there and you decide you don't like it? I said, I'll leave. It's
very simple, right?
It's very simple.
Yeah.
I've got to where a little more where I have no attachment to any certain outcome. Mm-hmm. I have goals. I have hopes and aspirations about different things, but not achieving them isn't going to bring me sadness. My happiness is not predicated on what's outside of me.
Yeah, you know, I think this is one of the areas where I really connect with you, because I think that so many people don't try things because they're afraid of the what if. You know, what if this, or what if that, or what if this doesn't work? Then it doesn't. And it's not the end of the world. You know, only the end of the world is the end of the world. Most everything else we have do-overs and try again and try the next thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, learn from what worked and what didn't. And, you're much further along the path than I am. But right now I'm really working to not have to work, but I just want to and less have to in my life. Right now I still have a lot of have to, and I'm trying to get away from that.
I think there is a stage of life where that is just part of what, getting from point A to point B. It's a step on the ladder. You started out, and then you find you're in the middle, and you decide, I have to complete a certain amount before I can move on to the next step. Mm-hmm. And like in my life, there was times where, like I said, I worked many hours, 7 days a week, several months at a time, taking very little to no time off.
Yeah.
Because I was wanting to achieve. I was like on that hamster wheel, which was necessary, but when it became not useful, I was able to discard it.
Yeah.
It's like use what is useful to you, even things that you learn, that you teach, keep what is useful to you and discard with the rest.
Yeah.
And if you're walking through a maze and you find a dead end, well, you know that your goal is to get through the maze. So you just turn around and say, that path didn't work, I'll go to another path.
Yeah, it's a great way to look at it. So right now you're in Cebu. I think you're just figuring out you'll be here as long as you want to be here, and then on to the next place. Is that all right?
Yeah, I'm probably going to be here another day or two, depending on flights, boat trips, or whatever. And I plan to go to Negros, to the Dumaguete area. I don't know what town I'll settle in.
Sure.
We'll just have to go there and see, what feels good and what fits for me. And I'll probably at least home base from there, or not. It's like I say, I have no attachment to any certain outcome. We'll see how it all goes. But it is my current expectation or hope that I'll get there and get settled in and meet more vloggers, meet more people, do more things. I want to start my own YouTube channel, but I have to learn so much about YouTube, and I'm not a tech guy.
Sure.
I can fix an ice machine that I've never worked on before, but computer stuff, YouTube stuff is not my field. So I have a lot to learn from other people. But I want to develop a channel that's different from anybody else's. It'll be the same in one way of people I meet, places I see, things I do. But I want to do a lot of more looking inside. Maybe like guided meditations, or speak a little bit from the philosophy that I developed from the myriad of places that that have taught me through life and experiences. And if I have enough people to connect to it, it'll be good.
Absolutely.
And if it doesn't, then I'll just hang out.
Yes.
And go fishing or something. But I want to try that.
Yeah. Well, make sure and let me know once you have the channel URL, and we'll put it in the description below. Won't be here when this probably comes out, but if people are watching a little bit later, make sure and check in the description. I
do have the channel open already.
Oh, you do?
Yes. Okay. And it's just got, while I was in Arizona at the retreat center, just some introspection, Very bad video, very bad quality, because it's coming from a guy that doesn't know what he's doing yet. But I wanted to throw something up just to part of my learning experience.
Very good. Well, I'll get the URL from you then so people can check it out. Now, glad you mentioned that as well. I know that people are going to learn a lot from you. And I think with the YouTube thing, you know, I'm very spoiled. I got camera guy Blair hiding out behind the scenes right now that, you know, is really so helpful for me with putting together the videos. But these days, even if you just got a cell phone, you know, you can make it all happen. You don't need the professional cameras like these or the lights or those things.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of great channels, especially with a lot of the guys, you know, Mark Thornton, Paul,
Right.
so many others, and Dumagetti. So I'm sure you'll learn a lot from those guys as well.
Like how to edit things, how to take it off my phone, put it on YouTube.
Yeah.
You know, things like that is what I'm hoping to learn. This is it's a whole new school, which is exciting.
Yeah, well, seems like you've been a bit of a MacGyver, kind of figuring out everything as you go earlier in life. So I'm sure this will be just one more thing that you know you'll learn how to do.
Yeah, why not? I may even talk to your guy here and ask him how much you're paying him, and beat the price.
Oh, don't listen, guy.
No.
There you go. Cut. No.
Yeah.
So, well, Danny, it's been really good catching up with you a couple days ago, and again today as well. Hoping to see you back in Cebu City, or somewhere else in the Philippines.
Yeah, I will be back in Cebu City, especially because I want to have to consult with you. But where do I get shirts? And where do I get shoes?
Sure.
Because I understand it on Negros is not so easy.
Yeah.
So I will be coming here for various things, plus people.
Yeah.
People I want to see.
Fat guy consultant over here now. I'm gonna add that to my business card. Where to get shirts? All right.
Yeah,
you got
it's
Danny.
true.
Yeah. It's not as easy as it looks.
Right.
Yeah, but there's definitely a couple of places over here, and of course Amazon free shipping from the U.S. to the Philippines now. So that's really helpful as long as you kind of find the right things on Amazon. Spend $50 or more, they'll ship free over here as well. So I find I use Amazon quite a bit these days, but there's some other places here in the Philippines as well I could tell you about as well. So
right.
yeah,
Thanks.
good stuff. Well, thanks again, Danny. I know people are going to really enjoy hearing what you have to say in this video, and of course make sure guys and check the description below, check out Danny's channel and say hi to him over there. And as always, guys, thank you for taking the time to watch. Take care.
See you guys. Thanks, John, for having me on.
My pleasure. Thanks, Danny.